The room was warm, but Jamie Dornan could feel a chill run down his spine. He sat across from the interviewer, lights glaring, cameras humming softly. Another press stop. Another round of questions he had learned to dodge for nearly a decade. But this time, something in his face was different. He looked tired of pretending. The interviewer smiled knowingly. "Jamie, after all these years, fans still believe there was something real between you and Dakota Johnson on the set of 50 Shades of Grey. Was it just chemistry for the camera, or was there something more?" Jamie exhaled slowly, eyes dropping to his hands. For a few seconds, the silence was heavy enough to make the entire studio still. Then he looked up, a faint, almost nostalgic smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe," he said quietly, "it's time I stop pretending nothing happened." Those words sent a ripple through the room. He leaned back, the memories already surfacing. "You know," he began softly, "when I first met Dakota, it wasn't in some glamorous Hollywood setting. It was just an audition room, quiet, plain, with bad lighting. She walked in barefoot, holding her shoes in her hand. She laughed about how nervous she was, and I remember thinking, how could someone make chaos look so effortless?" He paused, his voice catching slightly. There was this ease about her. No filters, no barriers. From the moment we read the first lines together, something clicked. It wasn't just acting. There was understanding. He smiled faintly at the memory. The director said, "That's it. That's our pair." And I remember thinking, I'm in trouble. As filming began, the connection only deepened. The story they were telling demanded vulnerability. The kind that blurs the line between performance and truth. Day after day, Jamie found himself drawn to the quiet intensity in Dakota's eyes, the way she could shift from laughter to heartbreak in a heartbeat. She made every scene feel alive, dangerous, unpredictable. He shook his head slightly, as if still trying to make sense of it. There were moments on set when the world just disappeared. The cameras, the crew, everything. It was just her and me, and it felt too real. He hesitated, then laughed softly. "I used to tell myself it was the script. The characters. That's what we were feeling. But deep down, I knew better. Off-set, things were different, or at least, they tried to be. There were dinners with the cast, rehearsals, press interviews. Always smiles, always jokes. But every now and then, when their eyes met, there was a pause, a spark neither of them could explain. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, steady, the kind of pull that scared him more than any fame or failure ever could. I remember one night," he continued, voice low, "we were filming late. It was one of the emotional scenes, and when the director called, 'Cut,' everyone left the set. But we stayed. We just sat there. No words, just silence. And I realized then that I wasn't acting anymore." He stopped speaking for a moment, lost in thought. "The truth is," he said finally, "it wasn't supposed to happen. I was married, she had her own life, and we were just two people doing our jobs. But hearts don't understand boundaries the way people do." Jamie rubbed the back of his neck, the weight of the admission settling in. There's a moment in every actor's career when you forget the line between what's real and what's performance. For me, that moment had her name on it. The interviewer leaned forward, careful, sensing the fragility in his tone. "So you're saying, you fell for her?" Jamie gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I think," he said, voice trembling just slightly, "I stopped acting a long time ago." The room went silent again, not the staged kind of silence, but the kind that comes when someone has said something real. He looked down, almost as if speaking to himself now. People talk about chemistry, about on-screen magic, but they never tell you what it costs. When the cameras stop, you can't just turn it off. You carry it with you, every look, every heartbeat. He looked up again, eyes glistening under the lights. "I don't know if it was love," he said softly, "but it was something real. And sometimes, that's even harder to forget." As the crew signaled that time was running out, the interviewer's voice broke the tension with one final question. "If you could go back, would you change anything?" Jamie thought for a long time, then shook his head. "No," he whispered, "because some connections are meant to exist, even if only for a moment. And with that, he stood, offered a polite smile, and walked off the set, leaving behind a silence thicker than any applause. The confession hit the world like a storm. Within hours of the interview airing, Jamie Dornan's words, "I stopped acting a long time ago," were everywhere. Headlines spread like wildfire. Jamie admits falling for Dakota. The truth behind their on-set romance. Clips replayed across social media, dissected frame by frame, searching for every flicker of emotion in his voice. But Jamie didn't read a single article. He couldn't. The moment the cameras had stopped rolling that day, he'd felt both lighter and more exposed than ever before. It wasn't a scandal he'd meant to unleash. It was simply a truth that had lived too long in the dark. That night, he returned home to Belfast, the streets quiet under the misty rain. In the back seat of the car, he stared out the window. A man who had spent years hiding behind scripted lines, now undone by one honest sentence. He switched off his phone and sat in silence. The city blurred past, every light smearing into gold and gray. Somewhere inside him, relief and regret were at war. When he finally stepped into his house, the familiar warmth greeted him, the scent of wood smoke, the faint hum of the heater, the sound of his daughters laughing upstairs. Life, ordinary and real, continued as if nothing had changed. Yet everything inside him had. Later that evening, he went to his study. The rain tapped against the window as he scrolled through his messages. Dozens of notifications blinked on the screen: journalists, friends, co-stars. But one name stopped him cold. Dakota. His heart thudded once, hard. He hesitated before opening the message. It was simple. "I saw it. You finally said it." He stared at the words, unsure how to reply. So many years, so many interviews spent pretending. And now, one line had unraveled the silence between them. He typed slowly, backspacing twice before sending. "I didn't plan to, but maybe I needed to." For a few minutes, there was no response. Then, her reply appeared. "Maybe we both did." Jamie sat back, the tension in his chest easing for the first time in years. He didn't need to say more. Some stories don't require explanations, they only need truth. The next morning, Dakota appeared at a film festival in Los Angeles. Reporters surrounded her instantly, firing questions about the confession. She smiled, calm, poised, that same quiet warmth that had always disarmed him. "Jamie is one of the most honest people I've ever met," she said gently. "What we shared was real, but real doesn't always mean forever." Her answer traveled across the world, soft yet powerful, closing the chapter with grace. Meanwhile, Jamie stayed out of the spotlight. He turned down interviews, avoided social media. Instead, he spent his days close to home, cooking breakfast for his daughters, reading by the fire with Amelia, taking long walks by the sea. In the solitude of those moments, he understood what peace felt like. Admitting his truth hadn't broken his life, it had set it free. One evening, he found himself watching old behind-the-scenes footage from 50 Shades. There she was, Dakota, laughing between takes, teasing him, her energy light and unguarded. He smiled softly, a bittersweet ache in his chest. He paused the video on her face, frozen mid-laugh. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for the chaos. Thank you for reminding me that I could still feel." He closed the laptop and sat in the quiet. The confession the world called shocking was, to him, something else entirely, a goodbye he never managed to say. Weeks later, during a small radio interview for a new project, the host cautiously brought up the topic again. "Jamie," she said, "looking back now, do you regret what you said?" He smiled, thoughtful. "No," he answered. "Honesty might make things messy, but it also makes them real. And I think the world could use a little more real." The host nodded, waiting, but Jamie wasn't finished. "You spend so many years pretending to be characters," he continued, "that you forget your own truth matters, too. What I felt for Dakota was never about scandal. It was about connection. About two people finding something human in the middle of chaos." He paused, his voice softening. But life moves on. And love doesn't always need a happy ending. Sometimes it just needs to be acknowledged. The studio went quiet. Outside, rain began to fall again. Soft, persistent, familiar. When the interview ended, Jamie stepped outside and tilted his head toward the sky. The air was cool, the world calm. Somewhere out there, across oceans and time zones, Dakota was probably filming, laughing, living her own life. He smiled, not with regret, but with gratitude. Because some loves don't fade. They evolve, turn into lessons, into warmth you carry quietly for the rest of your days. And as he walked away under the grey Belfast sky, Jamie Dornan, the man who had spent years denying, performing, and hiding, finally felt something simple, something rare. He felt free.